Well, you also have to assume that it'd be hard to understand why anyone would ask for a electronic count of the absentee ballots. I assume if you're going to have a recount of the absentee ballots, the point is just what we saw here in court. You're looking for irregularities on the ballots. These things are filled out at home by people. They'll mark on them. There can all be all kinds of things that might disqualify them. That would only turn up if you had a manual recount. It's hard to believe why anybody would spend any money, if there's a cost to all this stuff, to have an electronic recount of the absentee votes. It's argued, it's interesting, it's argued that the means of the voting system used originally for absentee ballots is electronic, because they're scanned and then they're electronically counted. I believe Mr. Schroeder also argues that the original voting system used with the DRE is actually manual. Because you have to look at the whole system, and the system includes the VVPAT. In any event, it would be manual by operation of 19253. So that argument sort of seems to turn things on its head. The absentee ballots that any layperson would think are voted manually, voted when somebody's sitting in their kitchen table doing it, that becomes originally voted electronically. In the electronic system, where you go in and turn the dial and punch the button, that becomes voted manually in some way, because the whole system includes the VVPAT. It's a little hard to follow that, frankly. But B2, no, 15627B also conflicts with 19253, because it reads, for the purpose of direct recording electronic voting systems, DRE, which we have, conducted manually means that either the paper record copies or, well, that's incorrect, because apparently you could get paper record copies from in other ways from these machines. Testimony's been that they contain, computer chips or something in them, other than the VPAT printer, from which you actually, if you wanted to, before they had the VVPAT, you could somehow generate paper results if you wanted to. Of course, that would apply. So conducted manually means that either the paper record copies, or you delete that, or delete that. Read, conducted manually means that the voter verified paper audit trail of the electronically recorded vote is counted manually, period. You would delete as selected by the voter who requests the recount. It seems like there's no alternative. Because it has to be the VVPAT. It can't be the paper record copies, whatever they are. So it seems like if you were to adopt what is sort of the Schroderian view of this, the court would be asked to substantially rewrite 15627. It would just be a different statute than it is today. In reality, because an absentee voter would, it's unimaginable to this court that they'd ask for an electronic recount of the absentee ballot. Really, all these options in here would all be gone. The reality of it is, at that point, would be, if you asked for a recount, you would have a manual recount using the absentee ballots for absentee voters and the VVPATs for DRE voting. That's where you would be. So anyway, that's what this court is asked to do, substantially rewrite 15627 under the contestant's theory of the case. It seems to me that a much easier way to do it is to simply conclude, well, starting back a little bit, it appears that 19253 became effective in January 2006 seems to be swept into the legislature's determination that they were going to require VVPAT and DRE voting. And so they did that. And so that there'd be no doubt that VVPAT would be the paper trail for DRE voting, they passed 19253. That is, as is pointed out, it is true, that's in a whole different section of the election code. That's in Division 19, approval of voter systems, and that's where they decided to change the voter system a little bit, I guess, to go from no VVPAT, maybe some other source of electronic or paper ballot, paper record of the ballot voting, to the VVPAT. So adding the VVPAT, requiring it, they passed in that section of the election code, 19253. And that was intended to be limited to DRE voting. That was what the VVPAT was for, and that's what they were considering. That was the purpose of that 19253, to codify something having to do with adding VVPAT. And if you assume that that's the case, then it would be easy to reconcile the two if you simply read B1 to refer only to a manual count having to do with DRE voting. That is, if you, the intent of it is that we've added VVPAT, required, maybe we feel HAVA requires us to do that, but we've gone ahead and codified this. Being cynical, you could say, well, we think we're going to get some federal funds for all this business. But kind of solidify that, what we're saying is if you want a manual recount, anytime there's a manual recount for DRE voting, you have to use VVPAT. We know that there's a 10% manual count rating recount, you use the VVPAT. Or if somebody wants a full recount, if there's a challenge and they want to recount, well, what you use is you use the VVPAT for DRE voting. Other than that, if you want to know the rules referring to the law, referring to recount, or requested recount, you go to 15627. And 15627 still makes perfect sense. But for the reference to the paper record copies in subsection B, if you interpret 19253 that way. So that's the way I would interpret it. I agree with Mr. Schroeder that you have to harmonize these two sections. You either harmonize it by reading 19253B1 as I read it, or you get to engage in this rather complex analysis that Mr. Schroeder suggested, and I don't think that's what the legislature had in mind. So, on the basis that there was not a full recount because there was not a manual recount of the DRE votes, I would deny the contestant's petition. I filed for the defendant.